Hey Vic, how's it going? How's it going?
All is well in the land of milk and honey. I cannot complain, or as the song says, I won't complain. How about yourself, Candace?
It's going and it's going. It seems like it's so funny. Because my friends and I, we keep making the joke of we're in like day three of election day. So it's like November 3rd uh,
Absolutely.
that we've been here for a little bit longer than we originally expected to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot going on, a lot to unpack, a lot to unfold. I think a lot has happened since November 3rd. And so I guess today we kind of examine and talk about some of the things that have taken place. As of right now, we still do not have anyone that is at the 270 electorates needed to be declared the winner in the
Mm-hmm.
presidential race. And we are waiting on some key states. We're waiting on Nevada. We're waiting on Philadelphia. Excuse me. We're waiting on Pennsylvania. We're waiting on Georgia, and of course,
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina will not be done until later this coming week. But we are waiting on those three key states to see how we are moving forward as a country, and it has been quite an interesting process.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just as we look at what's hanging in the balance, I think that we can talk about the fact that in the beginning, in a few of these, in three of the states that we named, in Nevada, in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, it looked as though the current president, was ahead. But we all know that as we were waiting for the mail-in ballots, because a lot of people opted to, vote via mail this time because
Mm-hmm.
we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so
Mm-hmm.
for their own safety, and hopefully for the safety of those around them, they took advantage of the opportunity to either early vote, absentee vote, early vote,
Mm-hmm.
or to mail in their
Mm-hmm.
votes. And so now we're starting to see those mail-in ballots numbers come in, and we see that
Mm-hmm.
former Vice President Joe Biden, has taken the lead in all three states, in Nevada,
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania, in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And at
Mm-hmm.
one point, in Michigan and Wisconsin and all of that was a toss up, but Michigan and Wisconsin ended up going blue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Words that, if you're from Michigan, you know why saying Michigan go blue, it might be a good or bad thing depending on how you look at it. I think in this
No
case,
doubt.
Michigan going blue was a good thing for a lot of people. Um,
Absolutely.
and so as we wait for the results to come in, we see more and more of how divided this country is. We knew going in, right? We knew going
Mm-hmm.
in that we were not all on the same page. We were nowhere near on the same page about what America looks like for all of us and what we wanted America to look like going forward. But now
Mm-hmm.
that this has happened, we see even more the division. And
Mm-hmm.
some have began to argue that with the president making the speech that he made last night, that he is rallying his base to intimidate others. If you see that in Detroit, I'm not quite sure if they're doing so in Philadelphia, but there were Trump supporters who were standing outside of places where people were counting ballots with
Mm-hmm.
their guns, and it's just like, what is the
Mm-hmm.
fascination of making people vote or decide heavy decisions at gunpoint? What are we doing here? Vic, go ahead.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Candace. There's been a lot of interesting developments here, to be honest with you. However, as we've been talking about for the past year or so with regard to this election cycle, I'm not surprised, and neither are you, at how bitterly divided America is. And to be honest with you, I pretty much, and we pretty much called it, it would be almost evenly split down the road. If I'm not mistaken, I think that Biden received, in terms of the popular vote, in the area of 73 to 74 million popular votes, I
Mhm.
believe.
Yes.
And I think that Trump received approximately 67 to 68 million popular votes, right?
So, uh, uh, former vice president is ahead by 4 million as far as the popular vote is concerned. Yes,
Okay,
he's
so he
ahead
has a
by
4
4 million.
million. Okay, so he has a 4 million vote lead on Trump. And as you so aptly pointed out, the door is closing on Donald Trump. The door is closing on Donald Trump. As I've been watching the election results too, with regard to especially the state, I would say the state of Pennsylvania and Georgia, the votes are coming from the metropolitan areas, the urban areas, and
Right.
they overwhelmingly vote Democratic, right?
Right.
So this door is closing on Donald Trump. He's desperate at this point because now he's about to become unless something dramatic happens, Candace, he is on his way to becoming a lame duck president, right? And he will not have the cover of the Oval Office that will be able to protect him, because also what he's thinking about, Candace, are the looming legal battles, the personal legal battles he has to face, right? That's what he's looking at. That's why he's sending out his attorneys, he's rallying his troops and whatnot, and he's having his people go to these different centers where the votes are being counted and whatnot, to try to cause some disruption, but to no avail. It appears that he has fallen short. It looks like he's on his way to losing this election, and Biden is on his way to winning this election. In fact, I've heard accounts, Candace, that at 8 o'clock tonight, Joe Biden and also Kamala Harris will be addressing the nation at 8 o'clock. Have you heard about that announcement?
You broke up a little
I
bit
heard
there.
that he
They're
may
on their
be
way.
addressing the country.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said you broke up a little bit there, but you ended up coming back in. I think that what's happening is there's an expectation that in a lot of these areas, the numbers will be finalized.
Mhm.
That we'll have a clearer picture of what is going on and what it'll look like. And like you said, we fully expect that the current president will engage in some legal action. He's already begun to engage in some legal action in different places in Georgia and Michigan. He's already tried, and I think those were thrown out. And I guess, and he's already said he said it. His son has said it. He's using it in the veil, the veil of "I will not stop fighting for you." And his son tweeted out that he's ready to go to war, and it's just kind of like this is so interesting, and even when he spoke in when he spoke yesterday in the White House, as a matter of fact, spoke from the White House, from the people's house, claiming that the way in which we've done this process forever, the democratic process forever, in the people's house, he's claiming that it's fraudulent, it's no good, and a lot of people are saying that he foreshadowed what he was going to do. He kind of telegraphed the way in which he was going to move, and so this. It's a lot. And I don't think that anyone really believed, and remember we said this on the show weeks back, almost over a month back, that we were not under the belief that he was just going to leave. And and a lot of people are saying he won't concede. The beautiful part about this country is that concession is not in the Constitution. Once the new president is sworn in, the old one has to move out, whether he wants to or not. So, and that's kind of how that happens. The Secret Service is actually they've already started providing more Secret Service for former Vice President Joe Biden, for Senator Kamala Harris, and so it seems that everyone is ready to move forward with the progression of how this works all the time. And even with and if he's within enough of a margin, it's within his right to ask for a recount. And so people speculate that he will ask for recounts in certain areas. As well as, again, it's been kind of tossed around and teased around that perhaps he'll go to the Supreme Court with this, to the justices and his latest pick to make a choice on, or make a decision about this election. None of this behavior is it's not unexpected. When you have someone telling you which direction they're going to go, when you have someone casting doubt on a system, saying there's a problem
Hmm.
with mail-in voting when they themselves are a mail-in voter. It's crazy. Uh, and
Absolutely.
and then, there's always a conspiracy theory when you're not a part of the winning team.
Yes.
I have been a part of this election process. I've been on the winning side
Hmm.
of the election process. I've been on the losing side of the
Yeah.
election process. And I know that losing doesn't feel good. It doesn't. It doesn't. And it doesn't feel good when you're
Hmm.
already there and all these people all of a sudden have to pack up. I've lived through
Yes.
that, so I know what that's
Mm.
like, and I know it
Yes.
doesn't
Yes.
feel good. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but
Hmm.
it's just one of those things that you suck it up and you move on because democracy is the voice. It's the voice of the people, and so you
Yes.
adhere to that voice, whether it feels good for you
Hmm.
personally or not. You do not cause destruction and tear everything up. You pack up and you go. And if there's going to
Hmm.
be a recount, then there's going to be a recount. But at the end of the day, you cannot be so self-destructive that you're willing to be a kamikaze agent and just tear up the country or tear up the when you lose, you pack up and you go. You might have you packing up, packing whatever, or talking about whatever, but you pack up and you go. You know, and if it was really that close of a margin, and you think you have a chance, you stick around and you
Yeah.
stay vocal and you stay out in the front where people can see you, and you give it another go
Yeah.
in another 4 years. That's
Hmm.
how this works. I
Hmm.
also find it awfully amazing that the areas that he is claiming are corrupt and they're the most corrupt in the country. He said about Detroit and Philadelphia, right? The crazy thing is, he was losing in Georgia. He was losing
Yeah.
his lead in Georgia when he said this, right? Losing
That's
his
right.
lead in Georgia at a rapid pace when he said this. But Georgia has a Republican governor, Republican Secretary of
Yes.
State.
Yes. Yes.
So you don't hear him talking as much junk about Georgia as we do
Yeah.
about Detroit or about
Michigan.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Arizona, he is while he's not gaining as much momentum in Arizona as
Yeah.
former Vice President Biden has in these other areas, but he's saying he has full confidence in Arizona because he's picking up votes in Arizona. I think another thing that we need to look at, another thing that we should point out is that while the majority of the former vice president's votes are coming from urban areas where he's picking them up, there are some Dem voters in these suburban areas, and their mail-in
Hmm.
votes are coming in, and he's being counted, and those
Yes.
votes are being counted in those areas too. And so I
Absolutely.
think it's good to look at the picture as a whole. I
Yes.
actually want to talk about too the fact that the messaging and the coded speech when it
Hmm.
comes to the urban arers is exactly why you go back and you have to say that Black Lives Matter. It is
Yes.
amazing that
Hmm.
this still translates into he wants to stop the counting in those areas, basically saying Black votes don't matter, which is why we have to do Black
Yes.
Lives Matter, because Black
Yes.
voters matter and those
Yes.
who are delivering those Black votes. And I'm just
Yes.
thinking, where's the all voters matter crowd? Where is that?
Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
all of the whole we're arguing and we're saying, and all of a sudden you notice the terminology they're trying to use. They're trying to say legal votes, only count legal votes. Let's be clear about if the vote was cast, if it was
Yes.
mailed in, and it is
Yes.
postmarked before that election or on election day,
Yes.
that is a
It's legal.
legal vote
Yes.
that counts and
That's
should
right.
be counted. This
That's right.
process what's happening here is nothing new from what happens during any other election. There are plenty of times where you have votes that have come in that were postmarked correctly, but they came in after the election day, and that vote still had to be counted. There's no need to start trying to make changes because you do not like it. This is the thing about democracy that I don't think his supporters understand. It's not only democracy when you win, but it's also democracy when you lose. Either way, And I think that that's something that they need to grasp. And
Hmm.
again, what he has to do, what would be nice, is if he respects the process, and if he gets up and he says, "Okay, it was really close, didn't get it this time, but I'm so confident in the fact that I have." Because if you notice, the Dems didn't flip any Senate seats, not one Senate seat. I was actually a
Wow.
little shocked by that, but not one
Mm.
Senate seat. The Dems, well, I won't say. I think they did get one, but what I will
Hmm.
say is the blue wave didn't happen in the Senate. like
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
people predicted that it would happen in the Senate.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell retained his seat. Lindsey Graham retained his seat. Susan
Mm-hmm.
Collins still has her seat. All of these
Mm-hmm.
people are still seated. And so it
Mm-hmm.
makes no sense to make the argument that, oh, they specifically only cheated Donald Trump and they just left all these other Republicans in place, especially in a place where they're making choices where they can still say no to stimulus packages. You know what I'm saying? Where they can still say no to removing impeached presidents, things like that. So, I mean, we just have to be logical with this here. While the Republicans might not have necessarily won as far as the presidency goes, they had some pretty major wins in other areas because the Dems really wanted to flip that Senate and they were not able to do it.
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
we need to take all of that into account. You know,
Mm-hmm.
again, it's not only democracy when you win, but it's also democracy when you lose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Candace, with regard to the Senate race, where does it currently stand? At last count, last night, I think it was 48-47 advantage GOP. Where is it today? Because if I'm not mistaken, there was a Senate seat election that was won by the Dems recently, right? It was confirmed the other day. So does the GOP still have a slight lead in as far as that's concerned, or what? What do we stand in as
I'm
far as
sorry,
that
were you talking
goes?
about the House seats?
No, the Senate. In the Senate.
Oh, no,
I think the GOP has a 48-47 advantage, I believe.
The Senate is still very much Republican control. Yeah, they came out fine in the Senate, even with the loss of I think they lost one seat, and that they came out fine with that. Even in the House, I think
Okay.
they might have gained a seat or two in the House as well, while the House is still majority Dem. So I think when you look in terms of this election, I think another thing that you have to understand is even the Republicans that came out against Trump, they came out against Trump, not the Republican Party.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
When they cast their ballots, I'm sure that as they cast it in the presidential election, yes, they might have checked blue, but I'm pretty sure everywhere else they checked red. You know,
Yeah.
they're still a part of their party. It wasn't I don't want to be a Republican anymore. It was I don't agree with Donald Trump, and I don't think he should leave the Republican Party anymore. So I think that's another thing that we need to be clear on when we're looking at how things played out the way that they played out. Because with Joe Biden, he didn't just have Dem support. You know, he also had Republican support.
Yes.
But I think that was as far as Republicans were supporting it was we won't vote for Trump, but in all of the other stuff on the ballot, we are going to stick with our party.
Absolutely.
And I think that's how they were able to maintain all of those other seats, but they did not keep the presidency because you had a lot of Republicans who didn't agree with it. And Vic, another thing that we have to touch on, whether you like it or not, Donald Trump, and even though it might be like 12 or 48, he did gain some numbers with Black voters. He did gain some numbers.
I was about to raise that point.
He did.
Candace, interestingly enough, he gained with regard to African-American women and men. I was observing the results of one exit poll, which stated that in 2016, whereas Donald Trump received 4% of the Black female vote, guess what, Candace? In 2020, he received 8% of the Black female vote. And let me make one more point here. As far as African-American men are concerned, one exit poll is suggesting that he received upwards to 18%, Candace, of the African-American male vote. Right. We have to talk about that. And I want Mike, I hope Mike shows up today. We need to talk about that. Let's pause and talk about that.
Remember, I tried to talk about that for weeks. Remember, did I not? I kept trying to talk about that for weeks. And even though people are looking in there saying, well, it's just 4% or it's just 8%, he still doubled in those numbers. So remember, I kept saying that there is something that the Dems are missing in appealing to certain segments of certain populations. And we really need to strongly examine that. Because what happens is, if you blow it off as just, it's just 4% of people or just 8% of people, what you're doing is you're opening yourself up to creating a pocket of people that bring other people along to one day vote against you. These things, sometimes they do happen quickly, but sometimes it's a slow and steady type thing. That's how the Republicans ended up with the Tea Partiers, because it was like, okay, we keep telling you, we keep telling you, we keep telling you, and then eventually it built into something else. And so if I'm a Dem, and I'm in leadership there, I am going to stop and consider, the only place that Trump did lose, again, he lost with white people. And that's the reality. The votes that he lost are those that
not white men. Not white men.
He lost a few white men too, though. If you look at the numbers, it was actually
Okay, all
not,
right, all right.
not the same amount of white men that voted for him against Hillary voted for him against former Vice President Joe Biden. If you look at the numbers, not the same amount. Now, I'm not saying he lost a huge chunk, but he also
He
didn't gain
didn't. Yeah.
black women, because we said we go from 4 to 8, but the point is those numbers still double. They still double.
But Candace, let me raise a point here. Let me raise a quick point here, right? I think going back to the earlier point, the Dems need to slow down and pause and take a look at this. There was a senator the other night out of the state of Missouri, a former Democratic senator. I forget her name, but she made a point that I wholeheartedly agreed with. She said that when you look at the actions of Donald Trump over the past 4 years, all the things that he said and he's done, and how bombastic he's still been able to pick up certain votes. Just as we've been saying this for the past few months, right? Both you and I were talking about the fact that there is a certain level of discontent in the electorate, particularly as it relates to Democratic voters, more specifically African American voters, right? So here's the question: what is it? Because obviously he's resonating, Candace, with some people. And the question is why? Even though he's bombastic, he's made these racist statements and whatnot. He's been making these over-the-top statements for the past 4 years. How is it that he's been able to resonate with certain people? There's something that he's doing and something that he represents that allows him to be able to connect with these people, including these black voters.
But I think that it goes back to, and then I'm going to read the comments. Hello, everyone. I do see your comments. I'm going to get to your comments. But I think it goes back to what Mike says a lot about Americans loving a winner. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
About people, or Americans loving someone that's bold and brash and will say certain things and get in your face. I think that's one part of his appeal. Is that he literally says whatever he wants, and as far as he's concerned, there are no consequences. He doesn't care about a consequence. What are you going to do to me? And I think that is unchecked power that a lot of times, and we got to be honest, sometimes when I hear some black men speak, I think you think the same way that these white men that you claim you can't stand, you sound like them. But the only difference is I think that you want the power to, the power that they have. And I feel like if you had the same power that they had, you would operate in the same unfairness that they operate in. The only difference is you don't have that power. And so I think maybe there's a segment of that was tapped into, of those people that if I had your power, I would do the exact same thing. I think that there's a segment of people that were tapped into that feel like every time I go, I vote for Dems, right? I vote for them. They say they want my vote. They say they care about me. But then I look around and my neighborhoods are not different. Then I look around and I'm not making any more money. Then I look around, even though we know that that kind of stuff doesn't solely rely on the president. At some point, they're probably
speak to it.
I just want something different. I want someone who can move people. And the one thing that Donald Trump did show was that he was indeed the head of his party. Because in a lot of instances, as he told them to move, McConnell and the other Republicans, especially in the Senate, they moved how they were told to move. He said, I wanted this judge confirmed. The judge was confirmed, And so I think that's another thing that's appealing of I keep voting in Dems, and the minute they get in, they're telling me what they can't do. But I'm looking at this guy, and his people are moving how he's telling them to move. And if I can get in and I can align myself with this guy, then maybe he will start telling some people to move in a way that I need him to move for me. You see what I'm saying? I think there's probably a lot of different reasons for why. And of course, you always have those conservative one issue voting Christians who are like, well, he's not, I'm never going to be for abortion. And so I'm going to stay voting this way, regardless of all the other stuff that's said. And I mean, there are probably multiple reasons for why he appealed to so many people.
There's another issue too, Candace, and I agree with you with what you just said, right? There's also, I'm going to bring up your favorite topic. It's a class issue. There's a class divide. As first and foremost, I believe there's a class divide as it relates to the political structure, whether you're talking about the Dems or the GOP and the masses of the people in this country. More specifically, I think one of the issues, particularly as it relates to the leadership of the Michigan Democratic Party, there is indeed a class divide as it relates to why they're not able to connect with the bases. They're not going to, they're not able to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why you find this disconnect also in terms of messaging. The Dems are not as good as the GOP in terms of messaging, and they're able to connect with their audience. But see, I think that what the Dems are going to have to do before 2020, one of the first things I think they should do via Biden and Harris is sit down and begin to have some roundtable discussions and talks about these issues of messaging, and also being able to close this gap that exists between the leadership of the Democratic Party and the masses of the people. Because what I think is going to happen, Candace, is that you're going to see more African Americans and more Hispanics and other groups, women's groups and so forth, that are going to flex their political muscles in terms of addressing these issues moving forward.
I think at the end of the day, if nothing else, one of the things that has to happen now is that push from the Black community. For the Black community to say, hey, you want it in, you need it over the top. We did this. And so now, not what are you going to do for us, as in we're asking you, but we're telling you ABC, XYZ. This is what we need. This is what we needed to look like. This is how, we need to be included in America, and this is how we do that, and this is what this looks like. You know what I'm saying? We have the crazy part is a lot of the issues, not all of them, because there are quite a few issues that are separate issues. But Vic, like you said, one of my things that I always go back to is class. I think one of the things that America needs to push for, period, is a living wage. That needs to be at the forefront. There needs to be a relentless push for that. And I think the crazy part is that these are people, because keep in mind, we hire them when we elect them. It's crazy. These are people that are working for us, that are then turning around telling us, no, we will not make it so that you are able to live in this country to where you do not have to work 2 and 3 jobs, to where you can spend time with your children and help properly educate them, to where you can enjoy this life, because nobody should have to live a life where all they do is work and pay bills and there's no enjoyment there. That is not a quality of life. No one should have to live like that. I think we need to seriously address homelessness in this country. We're so worried about other places and how they're moving and what they're doing to their people. And I'm just thinking, we're not talking about the human rights violation that is homelessness in this country. We're not talking about that. How are we not talking about that? We have millions of people that experience homelessness for a lot of reasons, but it's like we need to take an in-depth look at that. We need to begin to peel that back and deal with that layer by layer of homelessness, why people are doing it, whether it's access to housing. And we all know that access to housing, people can lack access to housing for a multitude of things, but more importantly, again, we go back to that living wage. A lot of times people cannot afford all of those bills. I think we need to revisit the companies, utilities, all of that, all of these things. America needs to really sit down, and the politicians need to listen to the people that have elected them. This is where we are now. I believe that systemic racism is real. I know it's real. We see it all the time. I believe that people need implicit bias training. Everyone needs to be trained. We are all prejudiced in some way about something, and I think that we all need we got to have the deep, in-depth conversations, because it's time out for us still fighting the same things we've been fighting since inception. It's time out for that. So at some point, we've got to do some things. But I want to read some of these comments, because our audience is here, and they're interacting with us always, and so I want to make sure that we get to their comments. We've had quite a few comments. First of all, hello to everyone. My sister is in the building. Hello to my sister. Let's take a look, and Paul, I'm going all the way back up. What I'm going to do is kind of read through these things, Vic, and then we'll, just put a pin in your mind as to where you want to comment. But Hometown Hero said, Hillary Clinton said 2 weeks ago that the election was stolen from her, so we can stop pretending Dems don't play that game anytime now. Hometown, no one ever said the Dems didn't. I said it's democracy when you lose, it's democracy when you win. Hometown said we can also stop pretending that Trump won't leave if the election is certified. I think we are seeing what he will do. But Hometown, we can move forward and we'll both see when this happens. How about that? Casey said something we're not going to repeat. Casey said of Mashad 2020. Tim said, yes, they did. Tim also said, and it didn't happen in the House either. And I think that Tim's comments were going back to when we were talking about the Senate and the seats and how they were not flipped. And Hometown said, I'll concede that Trump losing didn't stop the trickle down and doesn't point to mass fraud. Okay, Hometown. Tim said it's 48-48, so he's referring to the Senate numbers. He also said with a few seats yet to be called. Hometown said it's plus 12 in the House so far. Tim said there will be a runoff for both Senate seats in Georgia. Hometown said Biden actually got less Republican support than Hillary. She got 10%, Biden got 7%. Hometown said along with the 18% of the black vote and most non-white support of any GOP president since 1960. The Dems are shifting to the coastal elites. Their cultural woke message is losing big time nationally, which is why you had issues in Florida where they voted for the $15 minimum wage and Trump on the same ballot. Tim said, Tim's comment here is going to be about when we were talking about the conversation of not addressing why you had that segment of Black and Latino populations that were willing to vote for Trump. So this comment says, I tried to have that conversation with a few people the other night, but they just believe any Blacks that voted for Trump are sellouts, and there's no problem with the Dem party. My sister said hello, and I said hello back to her. Jarvis says, question, now that Biden has won, what did Blacks earn for their vote? And I think we were kind of going over that as well. And Hometown, of course, said probably nothing. And then Jarvis said, when we have to ask the Democrats for jobs, you are in bad shape. I'm not sure what Casey said agreed to, so I'm not going to think about it. Hometown said implicit bias training is scientifically proven to be it's ineffective, not ineffective. It's scientifically proven to be ineffective. Tim says there are 3 fractions of homelessness in this country: homeless due to economic reasons, those homeless due to mental capacity and no one to care for them, and those homeless because of addiction. Good points, Tim. Very good points. And I think that as a country, we need to break down what's going on. Oh, and Casey, Hometown didn't say that there was mass fraud, Casey. Hometown said that he will concede that that does not point to mass fraud. He was saying it doesn't point to mass fraud. Not that there is, that it doesn't point to mass fraud. So Vic, at any point in time, if there is a comment that you wanted to get in on there, I am not sure where Deep Blue is. I have no idea.
I thought of all shows, he would certainly be here with all bells on, right?
Listen, I talked to him yesterday, and as far as I knew, because that was the first thing he said was, am I going to be on the show tomorrow? I was like, Mike, we're going to actually analyze this election.
Yes, yeah, no doubt.
You can join.
But Candace, to your question, I will say this though. Florida is very interesting to me. Florida is interesting. Donald Trump did win the state of Florida, right? Mm-hmm. However, you guys made reference to the Latino community or the Hispanic community in Florida, which is extremely diverse. It's a very diverse community, right? You have persons from Puerto Rico, from Cuba, from the Dominican Republic, from Venezuela, from a number of different Central American and Latin American countries. And I've been following this, right? In terms of the messaging. In some cases, the messaging has been somewhat stereotypical in terms of how they've been passing or casting negatives towards the Black Lives Matter movement and certain Democratic candidates as well. And we have to look at the fact that if you have Cuban persons who are from, voters who are from Cuba, from Venezuela, they've lived in dictatorial countries that have had an authoritarian form of government. They weren't able to connect with the Democratic Party because the tendency in the messaging has been suggesting that the Dems have people who believe in socialism, who practice Marxism and whatnot, who would lend itself to authoritarian rule. I'm just saying, Candace, what some of the messaging has been, what some of the ads have been that have been targeting certain Latino populations in the state of Florida.
Right. And I think that's what happens. I think that in this country, when we hear the word socialism, we automatically begin to think, dictator. We begin to think overbearing government.
Absolutely.
I think that we don't recognize, and Vicky, you said this before about the fact that America kind of already has some socialism to it.
It's a mixed economy. It's a mixed economy.
Because it's not called socialism when it's done, people aren't as afraid to allow those things to happen. And don't get me wrong, I don't even there, and I can't even think of the number percent of against dictators, and I'm against there not being a democratic process, right? I'm wholeheartedly against that. But I think that we have to also understand that when it comes to the wealthy in this country, because Vic, like you said, that is my one thing that I will always go back to is the class system in this country. A lot of the wealthy people in this country benefit from socialism. Yeah. They do. That there are a lot of things that they get that would be considered a form of socialism if it were given to people who were not wealthy.
Corporate welfare, essentially.
That's the kind of conversation that we have to have. I also think that we need to be clear and be fair on the fact that there are a lot of systems designed to keep, and it doesn't matter your skin color. There are a lot of systems designed to keep poor people poor, period. And one of those things is we're constantly having this race fight. And again, it was said, if you can make the lowest white man think he's better than the highest black man, then you've done your job. And one of the ways that works, that poverty cycle works by keeping people distracted. That's how that works. We keep recycling for generations in poverty, again, no matter the color, because we have all of these other distractions, and race being one of them. The only way that classism works is if racism stays intact. Because if you have everyone on the bottom coming together on one accord on the same message, then there is a problem for the wealth not being evenly distributed in this country, right? And then you'll start to hear about people wanting actual fair chances, actual equal distribution. Because to this day, one of the craziest things I've ever heard was Walmart made like $1 billion in a day. And you had people, and these were white people in the comment section arguing as to why it was okay for the CEOs to get this money and have this money, right? But they weren't being necessarily given any raises or any bonuses, and they were saying they couldn't give the workers any raises or any bonuses. And it was like, you are the one doing the work. You know what I'm saying? You're on the ground level. You are literally the foundation in which that makes that possible, that makes that $1 billion possible. Because if you do not show up to work, if you do not stock those shelves, you know what I'm saying? If you don't, if you're not at the cash register for when the customer gets there, if you're not the associate in the store helping the customer, if you're not bringing the items off of the truck, or if you're not the truck driver pulling the truck up, none of that works without you. You know, you're supposed to be a $1 billion industry because of the labor that you put in, you know? To simply say, oh, because these are not what we consider. And I think that's another thing is America is very elitist in the sense that you knock labor jobs as if those labor jobs are not the ones enabling those people that are sitting in the offices or those people, those degree jobs, as if the labor jobs are not the ones putting you in the position to have the money and the salary that you have. You know what I'm saying? Because if you those people doing those labor jobs, and you'd have to be down there doing it yourself. And so not those people who go to work. And another thing we have to be clear on is college is not for everyone. And it just simply means you didn't get a college education. It doesn't mean that you're uneducated or that you're stupid. It just simply means you chose not to go to college. And I think we have a lot of biases that we need to unpack in America. And I think a lot of these things are used to psychologically keep people down and keep people from demanding what they deserve. There's no way that you should be the reason that this country is bringing in $1 billion because you're directly dealing with that consumer. You're the reason that the consumer keeps coming back, because you all know that it doesn't matter how good a product is. If people absolutely hate the way that they're being treated or something like that, they won't come. Not only will they not come, but they'll boycott you. We've seen that in this country, right? And so if you are the reason that that is making that consumer come back, if you are the direct contact, if you are the first line of I don't want to say defense, but that's the only word I can think of right now, then you need to be paid in alignment with that. You know what I'm saying? Don't allow them to make you feel like what you're doing is not it's not deserving of a wage that you can live
Mm-hmm.
off of, because
Mm-hmm.
you are the only reason that they're able to live off of what
Mm-hmm.
they're living off of and the money that they're
Mm-hmm.
getting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can talk more about classes in this
Yeah, no,
country.
oh, no doubt, no doubt. And with that, Candace, I think that the American people are the victims of the economic shift in terms of the kind of economic society in which we find ourselves living in. There's been a shift away, obviously, from America being a manufacturing-based society to a service-based and information-based society. On the heels of World War II, America was clearly the only superpower that existed in this country. America also had access to raw resources and so forth, not only in terms of the Western hemisphere, but in Africa and Asia and different parts of the world. And they were able to extract those resources. And because of that, you had the big three that ballooned into being extremely profitable corporations: GM, Chrysler, Ford, etc. Right? And so that goes back to the area in which we live in, which benefited heavily. Well, now in 2020, we're living in a society that is a service-based and information-based society, and these corporations no longer need laborers to be working for them. And what they've done with the onslaught of globalism is they've expanded their base overseas into other countries, and they can pay the workers there less than they would
Right.
have to pay union-based workers more in American society.
So this
Hence,
is
we find ourselves in that situation.
well, that's interesting that you brought that up, because I actually had that conversation with a good friend of mine who lives in Texas, right?
Okay.
And he was saying one of the things that some of the people that run the factories in Texas say is that them getting the undocumented workers,
Workers,
that
yeah.
those workers only work for 3 years, right, before they have to
Absolutely.
replace them. That this is the mindset. They said because after 3 years, they said when they first come in, they are excited to have these jobs, right? They're
Yes.
excited to be given these opportunities, and to us, what we're thinking is just a little bit of money is no big deal. To them, it's everything at that point. They said,
Absolutely.
but within 3 years of them working and 3 years of them busting their backs, they began to sound like the other American
There
workers.
you
They
go.
began to sound like, I'm doing all of this work. Can we get this? Can we get that?
Absolutely.
We need better health care. Can we do XYZ? And they said, so usually the shelf life on that is 3 years, and then they have
Yes.
to move on. See, they're thinking, and they're very much thinking in lines of a factory, not only in how they're building their products, but also in their workers. Of okay, let's
Absolutely.
move this worker, or let's move this worker, or let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is, and while I understand what you're saying, but my question to the person that I was talking to was, okay, that's fine. So they're moving their plants to Mexico, right? Or they're moving the call center jobs to India, or they're moving wherever they're moving. And yes, of course, in the beginning, I feel like you are going to have people that are rushing and clamoring to get that job. But I think that it's just human nature that once you are in a better
Yeah,
state,
sure,
right?
sure.
Once you are able to take care of yourself, your eyes are then open to the fact that this isn't fair, that isn't fair. You're no longer distracted by the poverty that you were once in, and your
Yeah.
eyes are open to the fact that you are not being treated correctly in the
Yeah.
labor that you're performing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so what's going to happen is, yeah, right now you're going to get what, 10, maybe 10, 15, 20 years of cheap labor out of them. But what's going to happen is they are going to be pulled out of poverty, and they're going to begin to unionize as well. It's cyclical. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh.
The same way, I'm telling you.
And I agree with you. I agree,
Hmm?
Candace, I agree with much of your argument, right? But in
Right.
America, the union is on the respirator. The union is on the
Absolutely.
respirator. They are
Absolutely.
being muscled out of the public square in many regards. They don't carry the same impact and influence and power that they once had, whether you're talking about the UAW or the Teamsters and other union-based organizations like that. They've also suffered from corruption from within as well, right?
Absolutely.
And you and I have heard certain horror stories about
Right.
union workers, like in the
Right.
heyday of the automotive dynamic in Flint, for instance, right? In the 70s, you've had people who were milking the clock. I mean, I'm
Right.
not saying that everybody was doing this, but there were certain workers who were milking the clock and taking advantage of the fact that they had union representation, and they could do these different things and get away with it because they knew that their union rep would come to their rescue, right or wrong or indifferent.
Vic, it sounds like Vic, what you're saying is humans are gonna human.
No doubt.
Their behavior all around.
What do you always say? We're a bad biosphere project.
I just said it sounds like biosphere behavior all around.
There you go.
Because we have been getting some comments. I want to get back to a couple of these comments. Paul,
Okay.
I'm going to start at where Tim said, I'm enjoying this conversation today. Well, thank you, Tim. We enjoy having you with us. Casey was just saying, let him on. He's got something to say. Tim said that he is from Florida. So I think that he has some stuff he could add as far as the conversation and the demographics in Florida, Vic.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I say that the U.S. tax code is the worst problem. We need to get a flat tax and stop punishing people who achieve. Tim also said knocking manual labor jobs started back in the 80s. Politicians declared we were a thinking and service economy, so we could let manufacturing go overseas. And that's when the disrespect began. Jarvis says, let's take this back to Flint. The party stores, the garbage company should be about Black people owning these businesses in Flint. We have had an LLC since 2007. Right now, we're buying Garbage LLC. And Jarvis also said, create your own jobs by educating yourself in the field you have a passion for. And Jarvis, that's another thing. I definitely push for people to be entrepreneurs. There are billions of people in this world, and so there's no such thing as someone's already doing what you want to do. You have a niche. There's somewhere you can be. You know what I'm saying? You have an audience. So I do agree with people beginning to build and stand on their own 2 feet, because while you do have people who have the entrepreneurial spirit and who can thrive in being entrepreneurs, you also have people who do not want to necessarily be in charge of a business or do anything for themselves. I mean, or run the company for themselves. You know what I'm saying? And so you will always have people who will still want to just go to work and not have to deal with everything that comes with owning a company. So the thought process of you'll run out of workers, all that stuff, none of that is real. None of that is real. And I want to go back to what comment was that? What do you think about Tim's comment about the flat tax, Vic?
Oh man, I've got to be honest with you. That's out of my scope right there. I need to do some homework on that, to be honest with you. I do hear a lot of talk about that, so forth, but I don't feel comfortable going in on that topic.
All right, so then we'll pause that one and we'll come back to that one in a later show after you've had a chance to kind of examine that a little bit more. No problem, no problem. But let's see. I want to whose response? Let's see. When Jarvis was saying, let's see. Let's take this back to Flint. The party stores, the garbage company should be about Black people owning these businesses in Flint. What do you think about that?
Yeah, certainly, Candace, you and I, we're both for entrepreneurship, certainly in the African-American community. I think we need to push that. And I think we need to look at education from a different standpoint. And I think that included in our educational curriculum should be entrepreneurship, business training, and everything that relates to that. We need to certainly build that up. I think we need to think outside of the box educationally, even as far as our not-for-profit organizations and what they do in this regard, but also the church. The church can play a role in that too, right? In terms of developing a leadership academy, an entrepreneur academy, and so forth that addresses those types of things. We could even start a think tank, right? A think tank that specifically deals with economic empowerment in the African-American community. So I agree wholeheartedly with them on that.
And I think, our bishop, he's all about that. I think that he's tried to do financial literacy classes.
Absolutely.
He's tried to take our church members, the congregation, he's tried to take them so that they can experience different things, so that they can have a vision for what they would like to be like, as opposed to what they see around them.
Absolutely.
I think all of this starts with, and I got to tell you, no matter how this election turns out, I think what this really starts with, again, is the people push. You and I are always on the same page where that is concerned. Absolutely. I think there has to be a demand for the policies and the laws to work in a way that they work for the people. Again, we could talk about the lack of truly addressing homelessness. And I believe that was Tim. I don't have the comments pulled up right now, but I believe that was Tim who had a very good point about 3 of the main reasons as to why people find themselves homeless. Whether it is because they cannot, thank you, Paul. There are 3, and this is Tim's comment, there are 3 fractions of homelessness in this country: homeless due to economic reasons, homeless due to mental capacity and no one to care for them, and those homeless because of addiction. And again, I think those things kind of go hand in hand as far as obviously we've talked about the living wage aspect several times, so I want to kind of push that over for just 1 second, but we can come back to that. I want to talk about the decriminalization of addiction. We're starting to see that more and more now. If you pay attention to some of the laws that are being passed around the country, you have more laws that are going toward getting people into rehab and getting them help, as opposed to just
criminalizing.
Because once you see that they have an addiction, I know even here in the city of Flint, there is something in place where if you turn yourself in and say that you need help with your addiction, regardless if you have a warrant or anything, they will not arrest you. They will get you help. That's something that we have here in the city of Flint. I know a lot of people don't know that because most people are like, I'm not about to go to the police station.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, but in the city of Flint, we do have that. If you go in and you ask for help, if you walk into the police station and you ask for help and you say that you're struggling with an addiction, they will not arrest you. They will get you help with that addiction. And I know a lot of people are like, no, it's not. I'm telling you, it's real. But
Candace, let me ask you a question.
We're starting to see that trend a little bit more in America. Now they are starting to really look at addiction and the effects that it has on people and how hard it is for people to really come out of using substances. Even with the prescription drug abuse, we're starting to see that they're trying to be more in line with helping people.
The opioid crisis also. The opioid crisis also.
Yes. I think one of the things that I think that we should look more into, I definitely think we should look more into is as it relates to the police force, right? I think that they do need to have more addiction counselors on police forces, right? More people who can come in and identify a problem and truly identify an addiction. That way that they can work hand in hand with the police to help make society better. So I think that's one of the things that if we're looking at and we're talking about maybe restructuring some funding within the police force, I think hiring,
professionals in that,
who are familiar with these things to be able to help and aid the police, even if helping to train the police in how to deal with someone when they're arresting someone who has a mental illness. Because we all know that when we look at police academy and how they're trained, they're not necessarily trained or equipped to deal with those things, but we're starting to see a little bit more in the country now that there is some training happening around addiction, that there is some training happening around what do you do if you pull up and there is someone who is clearly having a mental health breakdown. I think we need to do more extensive training. We need to do it a little, faster, because we saw it not too long ago. What was that, like a week or two ago, of someone that did end up being shot by the police because of mental health breakdown.
Absolutely.
He did. He ended up. I've got to figure out the right terminology for that, but he did die. He died.
Wow.
He was shot. He had a knife in his hand, but he was having a mental health breakdown. So I think that what we have to do is, just figure out how to restructure and refund, move around some funding so that the police have the proper resources and proper training intact as we look at this ever-changing world. And just to make sure that not only are the people that they're dealing with, that they get home safely, but the officers get home safely as well. So I just think that there's a lot that, even as we begin to talk about law enforcement, some restructuring that has to happen there. The state of Michigan has the Michigan State Police. We have some new kind of things in place to help residents in the state of Michigan feel a little more safe as it relates to dealing with them, and to make sure that there's a bit more barrier there. And I think one of the things that, because it's often said it at such tough times, or it's often talked about when everyone's angry and passions are running high, and trust me, rightfully angry. But I think that if we can find a calm pocket in time to really sit down and have a conversation with residents and law enforcement, you know, to really say, how do we restructure this in a way that everyone gets home safely? What does this look like, you know?
Yeah, the push for community policing, right? That's what it sounds like you're talking about, the need to have community policing, because community policing goes hand in hand with building a rapport between the police and the people, establishing a positive relationship between the two. I wholeheartedly agree with you. That needs to happen. But Candace, I want to ask you a question, though, as it relates to this shift, this governmental and law enforcement shift that relates to how they look and how they view and deal with addiction. What do you think accounts for this shift? Because when you think about the war on drugs, which was a war on crack, which was a war on Black people in many respects, now you find this shift, particularly as it relates to how they're addressing the opioid crisis. What do you think is accounting for this shift?
I think we all know. Unfortunately,
no, I don't know. No.
Deep Blue isn't here to be the one to say it. But I think what happens is you have that opioid crisis affecting more of suburban America, you know? I think that a lot of times when something doesn't necessarily hit home for you, you do not take it as seriously, you know?
Yes.
Or I think that you had to look at, if you treated the opioid crisis the same way you treated the crack cocaine epidemic, if you treated that the same way, then you would have a lot of jailed white teenagers. You would have a lot of imprisoned young white people. And the thing is, whether we want to talk about it, be honest about it or not, this country simply cannot have that. They're not willing to jail young white youth. And so what it was, oh, they really have a problem, and so we have to deal with it.
Yes.
And of course, like everything else that happens in this country, you then had to have Black people and Latino people get in and say, well, if that is the case, you need to look at these other forms of addiction.
Yes.
Since we're doing that and we're talking about it, let's get in here and make sure that we stop criminalizing people who are addicted to crack, people who are addicted to cocaine, people, you know, treat all addiction the same way. If we're going to say that this is a drug addiction, then we also need to recognize that this is a drug addiction as well, and this needs to be decriminalized as well.
Absolutely. I want to read wholeheartedly. Yeah,
because we're kind of winding down here.
Okay.
But Tim says he used to deliver beer for a union company as a non-union driver. They had to hire him because the union didn't go up or down more than 3 steps. They didn't put beer on shelves and not in refrigerators. They didn't double stack kegs, and they wouldn't deliver more than 16 stops in a day. And Tim, that goes back to Vic's point of, as far as how unions go, you did have some people that chose to listen.
Milk the clock. Don't get me wrong. I'm pro-union. I'm pro-union, everybody. I'm pro-union, but I'm trying to be truthful as well.
Right.
Candace.
But if anything, you have people that will take advantage of systems, you know?
Yes.
But it doesn't equate to the fact that there isn't a need for unions, because there's still a need for unions. I think that it's just a matter of fairness and people being willing to do in that. I've had to, because we've had to, in my career, we've had to hire or use certain venues, right? And those venues had unions. And trust me, Tim, I understand exactly what you're saying. Of there were rules, and there were, if they don't get a lunch break, which is fine because people need to eat. But there were some things that it was just like, okay, they would say, well, this guy can't do it. This other guy's got to come in and do it, and they can only do it from this time to this time. So Tim, I do know what you're saying on that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Jarvis said, did we get those police jobs filled yet that Keith Green needs? He also said, Deep Blue, much respect, but I don't vote for president, but I do vote for the governor of my state. It's the most important vote we can vote for. So that's what Jarvis was saying.
Okay.
But I think that, and gosh, we have a minute left.
Wow.
And I believe we're going to do this. We're actually going to do
goodness.
this. Vic.
Yes.
As we close out, I believe that next week we will have someone declared the winner for president. Meaning, I mean,
Yes,
I think it's going to happen before next week, but I'm saying that by the time you and I get back on here
absolutely,
next week,
absolutely.
we will have someone declared the winner. So, with that in mind, 30 seconds, Vic, what's up?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just witnessed and participated in one of the greatest rights that we have, and that is to vote, to cast our vote for the office holder who addresses our issues and resonates with us. I have to say hats off to everyone who cast their vote. However, we are in by 2022, a most important primary will be showing up. So what we have to do is to study the issues, to infuse ourselves in the political process. And once again, if these politicians don't live up to their credo, throw the bum out. Peace.
All right, and with that said, I just want to say that all votes matter, count all votes. If the vote is postmarked before, if the vote is postmarked at the right time, that vote should be counted as well. I want us to also seriously consider one of the things that I say all the time about class and how we all find ourselves in right standing. It's called the American dream for a reason. I think it's obtainable for us all, but we all have to put ourselves in position and fight the right fights for ourselves to get in position so that we are not working 2 and 3 jobs, killing ourselves while defending people who are not that concerned about us and our well-being. But we will have a winner declared by the next time that we do this show. So we'll see you next week and we'll talk about what happens in this whole week to come. Until then, see you.